Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. I am John Schmeelk. He is Matthew Citak. Big Blue Kickoff Live is, of course, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We're going to have Citak and I for the next 3 days on our 12:30 to 1:30 show. It's going to be some long ones. This is the start of it. Go to my Twitter account. I retweeted the Giants. They tweeted up our schedule over the next few days as well for all our content. It's there. I went through it on the last show. Then I tweeted it out today. So go, if you need details, check it out. The most important ones for today is our live show now. The Phil Simms Giants huddle. I think Pearson's going to try to get that up this afternoon, right, Pearson? So that'll go up this afternoon. I did talk to him this morning. We go through all the quarterbacks, or at least the top 5 quarterbacks in the draft. With Phil, he gives us some insight into all the guys, which I thought was a really good conversation. And then tonight, we are going to be live on WFAN here in New York from 7 to 9. Paul and I for the first hour. Then Tony Pauline will join us for the second hour, talking all things NFL draft. You can find that on WFAN.com, the Odyssey app, or if you're in the local area, 660 AM or 1019 FM. So make sure you check that out. And then tomorrow, we'll be back with Big Blue Kickoff Live again, 12:30 to 1:30, live after the pick in round number 1. If we have a second pick, we trade back in, then I will bring us back on after the draft is over to recap whomever that second pick is. Assuming, of course, that you're trading in towards the very end of the first round and you're not going to like 18. If we do that, maybe we'll work some type of magic. I don't know. But that's what we're looking at.
And I'll be holed up in the second draft room.
Making sure
basically for 72 hours straight.
Making sure all the graphics are spelled correctly, pretty much, right? Is that a big part of it?
Everything up on the website.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's gonna be a
lot of stories.
Long few days.
Hey, it's fun though, right? This is why we do it. This is my favorite couple days. Good job over there. The mic flag's got to stay out a little bit better too. That's because Paul always moves it by grabbing the mic flag. So you should blame him. He probably loosened it yesterday. He kind of sabotaged it.
Always blame Paul.
Always blame Paul. Absolutely. Where was I going with this? It's a good question. So today, what we're going to do here, folks, is kind of give our final thoughts on what we think is going to go down, what we would like to go down. We'll take a bunch of your calls at 201-939-4513. And then tomorrow, I'm going to put the finishing touches on my big board. I'll run through some of the names on there. Citak can pick it apart and yell at me, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? That'll be fun.
I would love to do
Which is always great. We'll disagree. We'll have some good debates and good arguments. And then I will put together my pre-draft mock draft, which I don't post anywhere, and I'll take a picture of it, and I'll literally post it when the draft is over to show how wrong I am, which is usually what it is. Did pretty good last year. I only nailed around, I think, 7 or 8 picks in the first round, but I hit 30 of the 32 players that were going to be first-round picks. So I was pretty happy with that, even though I didn't nail the exact spots.
I think we did our BBK mock draft a week too early. I wish we were doing it this week instead because, one of the picks I made already, Shedeur to New Orleans at 9, I don't think that's happening anymore. But last week, that was the growing buzz. Everyone's like, it's definitely happening. Derek Carr's out for the year.
Things change quickly.
Yeah, seriously. Next year, we got to remember, next year, week of the draft, let's do it.
Well, usually there's a lot going on the week of the draft. That's why I try to get it a little bit earlier. All right, maybe we'll have time tomorrow to squeeze something in. Maybe we'll find something tomorrow to squeeze something in.
Maybe a mini mock draft.
Mini mock. Maybe we can do like a turbo mock where we try to just go really fast through it and kind of motor through it. And if you like mocks, by the way, Tony Pauline and I did our final mock on draft season. So that's up there as well. If you guys want to check out a mock draft, you could check that out. Or last Friday, we did one here, BBK, me, Matt, and Lance did our mock draft. So
and
make sure you check that out.
Plenty of mock drafts up on Giants.com.
Yes, on the mock draft tracker.
The mock draft tracker, almost every Giants now. There are a lot of mock drafts up there.
And 7-round mocks are out too. So a lot of mocks that take you deeper into the draft. And why don't we use that as kind of a going off point here, Matt? Because we've talked about this a lot. We've done this a bunch, so maybe our minds have changed a little bit, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. I want to make sure we have time to get your calls. I know people have a lot of opinions on what the Giants should do in the NFL draft. So we talked about the mock drafts that are all coming out, and we had 3 7-round mocks come out, and there were 3 different groups of guys in that mock draft, Matt. And I thought it was interesting when you took a look at the groups, they were all very similar in terms of the positions that got taken. So we had Jordan Reed from ESPN, Chad Ryder from NFL.com, and Dane Brugler from The Athletic. You will not find 3 better sites that cover the draft than those 3. So they all had Abdul Carter at 1. They all had a quarterback in either the first or second round, or rather the second or third round. They all had a running back in either the third round
day 2, basically.
Yeah, in fact, all of them were day 2. They were all
Towards the end of day 2.
They were all round 1. Yeah, they were all third-round picks. One was the first pick in the third. The other was the second 2 picks in the third. Good point. We have an offensive lineman, 2 in round 2, and then Dane had 1 in round 4. Defensive tackle, Dane had 1 in round 3. Ryder in round 4. Jordan Reed in round 5. Wide receiver was in all 3 of them as well. So a lot of similarities in terms of the positions that the Giants would target, and honestly, kind of in the same area of the draft as well. There was not a whole lot of deviation here from player to player.
Yeah, and I think it kind of makes sense. I wrote about this in Cover 3 that just went up on Giants.com yesterday, and Joe Schoen has spoken about this, when he spoke to the media last week, in that the moves that the Giants made during free agency, unlike the last couple of years where we kind of went into the draft being like, all right, the Giants kind of really need to address positions X, Y, and Z. This year, there really isn't that need. Like, there are some positions, of course, that could always use more depth, more guys to put into the mix, but there isn't any glaring, holes in the roster in terms of the various different position groups. So the Giants really can just attack the draft by going best player available. And I think that's kind of, other than potentially, the quarterback picks, I feel like almost all of those other picks in the mock drafts are just grabbing the top guy on the draft board available, whether that's Josh Connolly or Gray Zabel in round 2 and 2 of the mocks, or grabbing one of those running backs on day 3. Like, with the success Tyrone Tracy had last year, running back isn't a need. You have Tracy, you have Singletary under contract. Of course, they could add another running back.
Yeah, in the round 3 running backs, those people know, were Caleb Johnson, Cam Scatterbo, and Damian Martinez.
Yeah, which honestly sign me up for any of those guys.
I'm with you.
Adding any of those guys to Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary would give the Giants just even more depth in that running back room and more talent in that group. But yeah, I think that is why we see these similarities in all of these mock drafts, because just you don't really have positions that you have to address, which going into the last couple of years, I feel like each draft there were multiple positions that we were like, the Giants have to come out of this draft with a player at this position and probably early on. And you don't have that this year. And I think that puts the Giants and Joe Schoen in a fantastic position to really just go out and get the best draft class possible.
I would like to walk out with a defensive tackle. That's the one spot.
That's the one.
And I think it's the plugger. I think you have to come out of this with a run stuffer. If you don't come out with a 3 technique, I can live with that, because I think you have Chauncey Golston who can go inside. Roy Robertson-Harris is a big, long player that can penetrate. Those are the 2 guys that I think would be at the 3 technique. Probably Robertson-Harris would be your early down one, and I think Chauncey Golston would be your passing down one, and I think those guys can rotate there, and I think you'd be okay. I think people are excited in the building about Roy Robertson-Harris. We even heard, no one's talked about him yet, but I do think they think he can be a really good player. Especially, he's really long, and Andre Patterson loves to coach long players. So I think he's really good at utilizing length that way. But they signed Ledbetter to be a backup nose tackle to Dex, and I think he's going to be solid in that role. But I think if you could get a Tyleek Williams, a Jamari Caldwell, someone like that to back up Dex, or even play next to him on early downs when you think it's a running situation, that's the one spot where I'd be surprised they didn't address that area specifically. And honestly, I probably would be surprised if they didn't walk out with an offensive lineman. That would be the other spot. They did not draft an offensive lineman last year, and I think you always want. And they added Jay Kubas as an undrafted guy who they like, but you do want to always continue to build and add to that group, especially since Van Roten, Illuminor are both entering the final years of their contract. If they don't pick up Neal's 5th-year option, he's heading into the final year of his contract. So you're really only going to have then John Michael Schmitz, Andrew Thomas, and Runyon as guys that are under contract on the offensive line. I don't think anyone else is on a multi-year deal. I'm trying to think of the names from the reports based on what the deals look like. I think those and Jay Kubas would be one. Was Hudson multi? Okay.
The reports were multi-year.
4. We're still at like 4 or 5. That's not a lot.
No.
So I would be surprised if they did not add to the offensive line group. Those would be still be the 2 spots that I would target. And by the way, I'm open to tackle or guard. Just pick the best guy. If you can get a tackle, great. If you can't, guard's fine. But those are the 2 spots where I would still say I still think the Giants are going to address them at some point in the draft.
I agree, and those were the 2 when I was saying my previous point. In the back of my head, I'm like, they probably will grab guys at these positions at some point. I think offensive line, unless one of these, top offensive linemen drop to that 34th pick. I'm talking about the Gray Zables, who was the other guy, Josh Connerly.
Would you put Donovan Jackson and Tyler Booker in that group, or would you consider them in the next group?
I was about to say those two names as well. I think I'd prefer. Well, Gray Zabel, I love. That would be probably my number one choice. Josh Connerly is another fantastic offensive tackle prospect. Would love him. In that same tier, though, I would put Donovan Jackson, especially when because of the versatility he showed this past season. And Tyler Booker is just one of the best, if not the best, interior offensive lineman in this draft. So if any of those guys are there at 34, I think you have to strongly consider it. But 30, and I've spoken about this a lot the last couple of months, but 34 is really where I would love to get one of those top defensive tackles. If one of the guys that everyone thinks is going to go in the first round somehow drops, I don't think Walter Nolan is getting close to coming out of the first round. But
I almost think there's a better chance that he goes top 15 than he's sitting there at 34.
Yeah, I was about to say that. But, crazier things have happened.
Sure.
But more likely, you're looking at the Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant sort of tier. And if those two guys are sitting there, again, I don't think either one of them are going to be there at 34 either. I think they're both going to go somewhere in the 20s. But if one of them is sitting there at 34, I would love to take that guy right there, because that is where you can meet best player available with a position, again, not necessarily a big need, but a position where you want to add, as we said, you're going to add somebody at some point in the draft, but now you can marry a position to add more depth with the best player available. Either of those two guys. If not, I would love to come out with round 3 with Alfred Collins. I feel like he is one of the type of player you were mentioning about that run stopper next to Dex. He is humongous. And I think he could show a little bit more as a pass rusher than he did these past couple of seasons at Texas. And especially if you put him in with the rest of this Giants defensive line, Dex, Burns, Kayvon, potentially Abdul Carter, whoever's playing next to Dex is going to have more often than not one blocker. He might even, there are times where we see a defensive lineman just with a free rush because all the offensive linemen are worried about everyone else.
It's true.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened multiple times for whoever's lining up next to Dex, because they're going to have so much top-tier talent on the rest of the defensive line that guy is going to be like the forgotten man. So if you don't get a defensive tackle at 34, I would love Alfred Collins, whether it's at 65. I've seen some mock drafts with the Giants taking him at 99. Obviously, if you get him at 99, that's great, but we've spoken about this. His range is probably somewhere between that 65 to 99. It's probably closer to 65 than 99.
Yeah, I'd say his range is like 60 to 80, something like that, 60 to 85, somewhere in that range.
If you want him and he's there at the start of round 3, you probably have to take him at 65. Otherwise, you risk losing him. But yeah, that's just another guy I think would be a fantastic fit next to Dexter.
Yeah, I have a second/third round grade on him, which is kind of middle, end of the second round to the beginning of the third round type of player.
Sense.
So, I think you could take the chance and try to risk the top of the third, but the bottom of the third. But I think you're really rolling the dice there. And he might, if he's gone end of the second round, that wouldn't shock me either. Because a guy that big with that sort of size, I'm with you. And it's funny, we kind of jump right to the 34th pick, right? And in a draft where you're picking third overall, it's odd for all the fun and all the intrigue to be at pick 34, but that's kind of where we are here, and we kind of just poo-pooed, and I'm the host, I'm the one that did it, that you're probably, you're going to have an opportunity to, we'll see if the Giants do it or not, to walk away with one of the best edge prospects that we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years. I'm not saying he's the best, but he's one of the best, and that's Abdul Carter, who, slightly undersized, fine, but his agility, his ability to get upfield, his burst, his speed, he does play with power as a pass rusher, has to improve his strength a little bit in terms of stopping the run and things like that, but, you walk away with a guy like that to add to what's already a strength on the defensive line, and it really just gives you an added foundational player to now add to the rest of the way, and I think both of us, I don't mean to speak for you, if I'm out of line, please jump in. I think both of us would be pretty surprised if the Giants did not go with either Hunter or Carter at 3. Not that we know anything, just from what we know about the draft. I know I would be. I don't know how you feel about it. I'm assuming you do the way we've talked about it before. Yeah. But I think you walk away with that guy at number 3, in a draft where there's probably only 2 or 3 true blue chip players in the class, and you get one of them, you got to feel pretty happy about that too, obviously.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Abdul Carter has been compared to Micah Parsons, and it's not just because they come from the same school and wear the same number. It's because when you watch him on tape, you watch his highlights, you see shades of Micah Parsons. So there, like that, he is, as you mentioned, probably one of, if not the best pass rushing prospect to come out in these last couple of years. Now, that doesn't always necessarily mean that's going to translate to immediate success in the NFL.
I mean, look at Chase Young, for example.
Exactly.
He was on the same type of level as
if
Abdul
not
Carter
even
was.
higher.
Yeah, possibly, correct.
And obviously, injuries derailed his career, and it has not panned out the way I think anyone really thought it would. But in terms of, and I kind of hate using this pick just because of what we've seen the last couple of years, but in terms of safe picks, Abdul Carter certainly seems like one of the safest picks.
As much as safe picks exist, and they really don't, but I agree with you to the extent that they do, he would be in that category.
Yeah,
yes.
And as you were mentioning, I mean, the Giants last year, before Dexter Lawrence got hurt and missed basically the entire second half of the season, the Giants were leading the NFL in sacks, and at one point were on pace to shatter the all-time single-season sack record for any team in NFL history. They were on pace. And then Dex got hurt. Kayvon was already out. Things kind of fell apart after that.
They played some better teams. They didn't have leads, and it got ugly.
Yeah, they were playing from behind by multiple scores in basically every game. And, that threw a wrench in that record-chasing, campaign. But you add Abdul Carter to the mix with a healthy Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, all of these other guys we were talking about, the more, reserve roles between Chauncey Golston, Roy Robertson Harris, Nacho, like the Giants would have, in my opinion, one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I don't think anyone would be able to argue against that. I'm not going to call it the best.
One of the best pass rushes at the
pass
very
rushing,
least.
Yes. I should have clarified. Pass rushing. The Giants still need to do, or at least show some improvement in the run defense, of course, because that's sort of been an Achilles heel the last couple of seasons. But in terms of pass rushing, I really can't, off the top of my head, I can't really think of what would be a better pass rushing unit, at least on paper. I mean, of course, the Eagles deserve to be in that consideration because they just year after year have phenomenal defensive lines and offensive lines. So I don't think it would be the worst thing to sort of mimic their draft strategy a little bit.
Hey, look, building up front's never a bad idea.
Exactly.
Joe Shane said at his press conference last week, I was just going through it. I was cutting something up for the WFN show tonight. You can't have enough pass rushers. Like, you're always going to figure out a way to get them on the field. That's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, Joe said that in his presser last week. He was like, Did anyone watch that Super Bowl? Philly was going after rushing the quarterback with 4 rushers. The entire game. And Patrick Mahomes, I mean, I feel like I can count the number of plays where he looked comfortable in the pocket on one hand.
Yeah,
like,
if that.
He was running for his life, and that was with 4 rushers the entire game. So, yeah, you can never have enough pass rushers. I would be surprised if the pick is not whoever's left between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, whoever the Browns don't take. However, I do want to leave the window very, very slightly open because I do think there is at least somewhat of a chance the Giants could move down in the draft.
You have to get a lot for it, though.
Of course. At this point, it doesn't seem likely the Giants are moving up. I mean, the Titans GM the other day said, we are sticking at 1. So most likely Cam Ward off the board. I guess there is a possibility that the Giants could look to swap with Cleveland if they really love, Hunter or Carter more than the other. I don't think that would be the case, but I guess it is possible. But more likely than that, I think they could look potentially to move down a couple picks if someone basically offers them, Paul mentions this all the time, the Godfather offer. I saw a report, I think it was this morning or yesterday that said both the Jaguars at 5 and Raiders at 6 are aggressively trying to move up to get one of those blue chip prospects. If you can move down to 5 or 6 and get a pretty significant draft haul to do that, it's something, again, you at least got to consider it because you could likely still come out of this draft with, someone like Mason Graham.
Had to be multiple day 2 picks. Multiple. You aren't getting a 1 for that. You're not getting a 1 for that. But if you can get like a 2 and a 3 and another mid-round pick next year, you'd have to consider it.
What if the Raiders offered you their one next year?
I'd do it in a second.
Just the one. No, nothing else. The one next year to move from 3 to 6.
You're getting 6 this year, obviously, though, right?
Yeah. You get 6 and their first rounder next year.
Yes.
I think I would too.
I absolutely do it.
You know, there are teams, you know, that are being reported of wanting to move up, such as the Bears, for example. I wouldn't want to trade with the Bears because I think the Bears are going to be good this year.
Correct.
And I don't think they're going to be picking, you know, in at least the first half of the first round.
Now, with Geno there, the Raiders are going to be better.
True.
But we haven't exactly seen the Raiders put together a good team in a while. So I think you feel better, to your point, about them. They have a higher chance of bottoming out than another team does, where you can wind up with 2 top 5, 2 top 6 picks last year if the Giants season doesn't go well, which we obviously hope that doesn't happen.
Exactly. That's why I would be a lot more interested in trading if they were to trade down with a team, you know, like Carolina at 8, New Orleans at 9. Obviously, it takes 2 to tango. Those teams would have to be looking to move up. But, you know, the Bears are just one team. Again, another team I saw reportedly with a lot of interest in moving up. I don't know if it necessarily would be all the way up to 3.
Same thing, Niners at 11 and Cowboys at 12, right? Like, you don't expect those teams to be picking in the top 15 next year.
Exactly.
Right.
I wouldn't want to do those deals because if you're going to trade down and get a first rounder next year, obviously you never know what could happen, but you want to do it with a team that you at least think there's a decent chance that they could be picking pretty early, because then that would put yourself in a good situation. If you don't address the quarterback position in the draft this year, that puts you in a pretty good situation next year, having 2 first-round picks, the 1 pick from the other team being early. Who knows where the Giants pick will be, but it puts you in a good position to potentially move up for a quarterback next year if you choose to.
All right, good segue to the quarterback position. I do say this. The Giants know they need to score more points. I think they've helped themselves with Russell Wilson being here and Jameis Winston. I would not be shocked, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, if they add weapons, whether it's running back, tight end, or wide receiver, or even all 3. None of that would surprise me. It's a deep draft in all 3 of those spots. Wide receiver not at the top, but on day 2 for sure. So if they add guys at all 3 of those spots or 2 of those 3 spots just to get more explosion on offense, that wouldn't surprise me. I don't think that surprised you either.
I think it would surprise me a little bit if they took a wide receiver early.
How early?
Like 34.
Okay, that would surprise me too.
Unless, you know, someone like Egbuka drops to 34.
Yep, I agree with that.
But mostly because of what Joe said last week.
But like round 3 wouldn't surprise you, for example.
No, round 3 and especially day 3 would not, because that's more a little bit of a developmental guy, special teams contributor. 34, you're expecting that guy to basically, be a starter pretty quickly,
which you don't necessarily need with their group.
You don't need it. And Joe even said last week, Giants are very happy with the top 3 with the whole wide receiver room, but especially the top 3 guys they have with Malik, Slayton, and Wandell.
All right, so that brings us to the quarterback position, which you referenced in your last answer. And this is where I've landed, guys. If the Giants believe one of these tier 2 quarterbacks, Sanders, Dart, Milroe, Shook, if they believe these guys have a good chance of developing into a high-level starting quarterback and not just some run-of-the-mill starter, and I don't think any of those guys, maybe Shook could, but I don't even think he would with Wilson here, are going to start right away. So if you believe one of those guys has a decent shot at developing into a high-level, top 12 NFL starting quarterback, you go, you do what you can to pick him, you trade up if you have to, 34, whatever, you go get that player. But if your evaluation says that I'm not sure this guy has a chance to become that guy, you don't pick one for the sake of picking one. I'm all in favor of throwing darts, no pun intended, and taking bites of the apple, taking chances. I should change my terminology on that. But I would like to get one in the building because I want another shot at developing one. But you have to trust the evaluation of Brian Dable, his staff, and the scouts in the front office. And if you believe one of those guys, go and get them. If you don't force the pick and just pick one for the sake of picking one, because then it's not a waste if you get a good backup quarterback at 34, but it's certainly not helping you win games this year or probably even next year, depending on how this goes. So if you believe in one of these guys, you think they can become a starter as a developmental player, go get them. If you're not in that camp and you don't think so, don't pick one at 34. Maybe one of those guys somehow gets to 65. I don't think like a guy like Shook, is that impossible? No. You roll the dice to see how it goes. Maybe you pick Quinn Ewers a little bit later, or Riley Leonard, or Will Howard, or Dylan Gabriel's another one. Any of those guys, then go do that. Or Kyle McCord, another guy. Then go do that, because it is actually a pretty deep day 2 and early day 3 quarterback group. There'll be more guys than that group. I don't know how the Giants evaluate that group of players. At 34, I'd probably be willing to take the chance on one of those guys. I, for one, I'm not in favor of using 34 on a non-quarterback, then having to use another third-round pick on top of that to select that quarterback by moving up. Then you're just not filling out enough of the roster for me. So I'd be leery of doing that. But if the Giants are sitting there and they believe, you got to go get that guy. So it all depends on what you think of the position. I'm more apt to just sit at 34, and if one of those guys are there, and depending on who else is available, like if a Josh Connor is there, I'm still picking Josh Connor like we did in our mock last week, right? And then you make the decision you have to make. But I do think they would like to walk away with a quarterback, as Joe Shane said last week. But to your point earlier, they are not backed into a corner where they feel like they have to force it at that spot.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I would prefer to stick at 34, keep those 2 third-round picks, your early 4th-round pick, and just let the board play out. And if one of those quarterbacks drops to you and he is the top or near the top of your board, by all means take him. The only way I would say, like, I'm all for potentially trading up is if, obviously, Cam Ward is off the table. You get to that next tier of quarterbacks, and you have one guy who is pretty significantly separated from the others.
Yeah.
And he is falling, we're getting to like the mid-20s and he's still on the board.
Look at the Vikings, by the way. He only have 4 picks.
Yeah. Then I'm all for moving up. But again, we have no idea what the Giants draft board looks like. But for me, it would have to be a pretty big separation between whoever that guy is you're looking to trade up to get and the rest of the quarterbacks that are still available. So I'm with you. I would rather stick at 34 and keep the 34, 65, 99. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if the Giants don't take a quarterback at all. I mean, they went out and signed the 2.
I would be surprised, but not shocked.
Yeah, I don't know. There's obviously they signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and you have Tommy DeVito, who, say what you want about him, but he's won games for this team the last 2 years, and he's still a developing young quarterback. It would not surprise me if the Giants came out of the draft without selecting a quarterback. I think chances are more likely than not they do, but I would not be surprised because, again, this roster, I think the roster is I'm not going to go overboard here, but a little bit better than what some people outside this building seem to think it is. I don't think it's like that far away from trying to push for, a wild card spot. I don't think we're there yet, but with a few more pieces, I think it is a team that could at least contend for one of those wild card spots. And obviously,
especially if they were in a different division, the NFC East makes it tough.
That's the issue.
But they were in the NFC South. I think we could easily be having that conversation.
And the schedule this year for the Giants obviously is one of the most difficult in the league, despite their last place finish last year, which again does not help. But yeah,
you can only play the games on your schedule, right?
But just those day 2 picks, I think you're going to get more value selecting a non-quarterback than potentially reaching for one of these developmental guys.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Don't sleep on trading down from 34 either.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned this several times the last couple of months.
These teams go to sleep on Thursday, wake up Friday, and they get obsessed with like the one guy left that maybe has a first-round grade, and they'll do whatever they can to go up there and get him.
Yep.
If you can get another late, mid-third-round pick or even an early 4th-round pick to move down 3 or 4 or 5 spots and get another one of the guys that you could have a starter in the top 100 of this draft, don't sleep on that.
I think I want to say it was Field Yates's last mock draft had the Giants moving down from 34, I believe, to 38.
Picking Booker, right? It was Booker?
So still getting Booker and then adding an early 4th-round pick, like a top 5 or 6 pick in the 4th round.
Take it. So then you have 6 picks in the top 110.
What's wrong with that? To move down 4 spots, and there's a good chance if you move down 4 spots that the guy that you were thinking about at 34, there's at least a decent chance that he's still there at 38. Oh, yeah.
And then you can pick that wide receiver then at 110. You could pick the tight end at 110 or the running back. Like you're going to have good guys or defensive tackle, the plugger, right? You're going to have good guys at those positions available early in the 4th round. So I'm with you 100%. All right, folks, 201-939-4513. I did my spiel earlier about all our content, so I don't have to do it now, which is great. Let's go to Brian in upstate New York. Guys, we're going to try to get through as many as we can today. So have one major point, get to it, and we're going to move on to the next caller. All right, Brian, what's going on?
I guess you guys kind of answered the question I had initially. But I guess I'll do a shameless dynasty question.
Okay.
Tyrone Tracy. So are the Giants committed to having him as their feature back? And if not, when do you think they'll take a running back? And who do you think it'll be in what round?
Good question, Brian, and appreciate the call.
Thanks, Brian.
I believe they are committed to Tyrone Tracy being a big portion of their running back room next year. Whether that's in a true number 1 role with a number 2 behind him, or a 1A, 1B type of role with him in one of those 2 spots. And I think he would start the season as the 1A if they bring in a rookie. I doubt they just hand the rookie the 1A job right off the bat. Tracy didn't get that until, week 7 or 8 last year or something like that?
I think it was week 5, but only because Singletary went down
because he got hurt.
Injury.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when would they draft a running back? I would be surprised if they took one at 34, myself personally. Now, based on all the reports we've seen of guys they've brought in, maybe that is on the table. I don't know. I would say anywhere from round 3 to 5 is when we would see a running back go off the board to the Giants.
Yeah, I think
probably 3 or 4.
I think all you got to do is go back to last season and listen to what basically any offensive coach had to say about Tyrone Tracy to know that they love him in this building. And what's not to love with what he showed last year? However, as we see with some of the best rushing units across the NFL, the Detroit Lions come to mind. They spent the 12th pick on Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yep.
And still have not made him the full featured running back. They brought in David Montgomery as well, and those 2 are like a 1A, 1B.
Yep.
So even a guy that was a high first-round pick is not getting, that bell cow running back status, and it's obviously working for Detroit. They have the best rushing unit in the NFL, in part because of that amazing offensive line.
At this point, 20% of the running back rooms have a true number 1, and that's it? Maybe?
Yeah. Unless you have one of the very top guys, and even in some situations with those top young backs, with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier are still a pretty decently big part of the running game. Jahmyr Gibbs with David Montgomery. So I do think Tyrone Tracy will be the starting running back to start the season. I think I agree with you that I feel like, round 3, maybe round 4 with those 3 picks, that could be the sweet spot for taking a running back in this year's draft based on the depth of the running back class and where guys are projected to go. I think that is a good sweet spot for, not necessarily reaching for a guy, getting a guy where he falls on the draft board. However, I will say at 34, and I don't expect this to happen, another guy that I think will be a first-round pick, probably in the early 20s, but maybe not even. But if Omarion Hampton somehow drops to 34, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Giants took him at 34. I don't think he's going to get there, so it's not, something to necessarily worry about.
He might.
I mean, I've seen mock drafts having him go as high as 10 to the Bears.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to buy those.
I think he's going to go somewhere in the 20s, but it wouldn't shock me if he was there at 34 and the Giants took him.
So last year, Matt, there were 6 running backs that had more than 263 carries. Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley. Now, the other guys I would put into that group, but they just didn't get there because of injury, would be Joe Mixon. I would consider him to be a true number 1 for Houston. They really didn't give many of those carries elsewhere. So that would be 7. I mean, Breece Hall even splits carries with the Jets with those guys. So I would not. He was a little banged up, but he'd be maybe in that category, and then maybe James Cook. But they're still not pounding him with 20 carries a game.
I mean, James Cook, that carry number is in how many games? 16?
Yeah, but I feel like, let me look at his game log real quick, because I feel like as the season went along, he kind of became more of the every down guy. Nah, you know what? I take it back. No, I would not put James Cook in that category. I take that back.
It's really only a handful of guys that have that bell cow status. It's just not something you see too often anymore because of the injuries we see at the running back position.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Giants took one. I do think somewhere between rounds, I guess, 3 to 4, I'll add 5 in there as well.
5 might be a little late.
But, I mean, again, this running back class, we've spoken about how deep the defensive tackle class is and the edge group. The running backs are just as deep as those 2. Those are the 3 deepest positions in this draft. There are guys that will go on day 3 that will be good NFL running backs.
Yep.
So you could wait potentially until round 5, even, if you want to take a flyer on someone with one of the 7th round picks, like there will be guys that are worth drafting in the 7th round that obviously you're not necessarily going to rely on that guy from day one to come in and play a significant role, but could potentially down the road develop into a guy that can give you at least a good amount of carries.
Now let's go to Coach Marvin in Delaware. He's up next. Hey, Coach.
How you doing, John and Matt?
We're good, Coach. What do you got?
I was kind of with both of you guys about the draft a little bit. When Matt was saying stay put and try to draft where you're lined up at, because I feel that they don't make any trades. The 34, I think somebody from the first round going to push down to that 34th spot. I don't know who that is, what position, but you will get a good player at that.
I think you'll get a good player, Coach. Remember, there might be only 15 first-round grade players on most boards this year, so I'm not sure if one of those guys is going to get all the way down to 34. It might be tough.
I understand that. I'm not basing it on their ratings. I'm basing it on first-round guys out of 32.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, for sure.
Who you have as your top 32, a few of those guys are going to fall into that
absolutely, 100%. Yes, that's correct.
And I think the second thing's going to happen in the 3rd round. Some of those second-rounders are going to fall at that top pick in the 3rd. So in a way, I'm with Matt. If they stood still and did that, I'm fine. But I'm with you, John. I'd be totally surprised if they didn't get a quarterback because of the money and time they put into these guys, especially into Sanders. And real quick, I believe they're not going to pick him at 3, but I believe if he's within reach, I believe they're going to go get him because of the time they put into him. I think they like him. That's my feeling. I don't know. My feeling, I think they like him. And if he goes too early, I think that's why they're looking at the other guys. Maybe they fall closer to them at the 34th spot, and that's what they'll do. Because I think Sanders is getting a lot of, put downs because of he's not athletic, his arm, and all this stuff. But I look at the intangibles in the sense that the Giants had a horrible offensive line for the last few years. We didn't play too bad in the beginning of the season last year, but at the end of the year, it started looking bad. Who is more equipped to play behind a bad line in this draft more than Sanders? And he completed 72% of his passes with that offensive line.
You remember, though, Coach, about a third of those were screens, so a lot of that completion percentage did get bolstered a lot by a lot of screen passes. Just keep that in mind.
But how many? I watched their games, just about all their games. How many times he brought them back when they were losing?
No, that's true too.
Line. And the other part to that, the last part I have to that whole equation is if you look at their rushing, they rushed for 847 yards for the season.
No, they had 0 running game, Coach. Absolutely 0.
So they finished out of 134 schools, they finished 134. And Genty, in 3 games, ran for more yards than they ran for the whole year.
Sounds right.
So he had a lot of pressure on him, and the kid got through it. If you don't like him, you don't like him. That's why I was hoping Paul was with you guys, because I wanted to ask Paul, is he off Paul's board totally? So
I don't think Paul would, but thank you, Coach. Appreciate the
Thanks, Coach.
call. I don't want to speak for Paul, but I think personally for him, I don't think he would pick him until the 3rd round at the earliest.
Yeah, I feel like Paul's made that pretty clear.
Yeah. But again, as Paul said many times, that if the Giants believe in the kid, they should absolutely go and pick him, and he would be 1,000% in favor of that.
Yeah. So, but a couple of things to Coach's point. One, I agree that if Shedeur Sanders, especially if he gets past, I guess, the Steelers.
It'll be the Steelers, yeah.
The Steelers at 21 would really be the one that I'm looking at. If he gets past that, I would not be surprised in the slightest bit then if the Giants attempted to move up, 10 or so picks to then take him. But just to the one point that Coach made about all the time that the Giants have spent on Shedeur the past, what do you want to call it, the past year. I'll say this. Going into this past season, Shedeur Sanders was one of the highest ranked quarterbacks in the nation. So it's not surprising at all, given that quarterback was clearly a position of need for the future, that the Giants spent a lot of time during the college football season scouting Colorado games. That's no surprise at all there.
And by the way, Travis Hunter's there too, is also pretty good.
Yes. Travis Hunter, who everyone expected to be one of, if not the top pick, again, also there. But as we hear, former front office personnel every year say that a lot of the time you spend a lot of time on a player to kind of confirm some of the worries you had. I'm not saying that's the case with Shedeur, but like with prospects in general, like a lot of guys that get brought in for visits are guys that you want to double check to make sure that, X, Y, and Z checks out okay, or if it doesn't check out okay. The real safe, all around safe blue chip guys, a lot of the time are guys that you don't need to bother bringing in for a visit because you already know that they're good. You don't have any concerns about them, no red flags.
There was no need for a 30 visit for Saquon Barkley, for example. Like, you just knew he was a great player.
Exactly. So this is not even about Shedeur in particular. This is just about any prospect in general. You can spend a lot of time on a guy, and that could be just to confirm potential concerns you have about him, just as much as it is to, bring him in and see if he'd be a good fit and, the good things as well.
Like, be all that time, and you're like, we spent a lot of time at that point. We don't want to draft that guy.
Exactly. Every year you
who knows?
You hear reports about that happening across the NFL.
100%.
So just wanted to point that out about the time spent there.
Great point, Matt. Let's go to Jason in New Haven. He's up next. Hi, Jason.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
What's up, man?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for all the content. You guys are great, and I just wanted to, always give you guys your kudos for all the amazing content you guys putting out. I mean, you guys are truly, truly one of the best in terms of content and guests. So
thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that, Jason.
What do you have on the draft, my friend?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I'll make my long point, and you can respond off there. If you want to cut in, that's fine.
Perfect. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Tomorrow's, I'm excited for tomorrow. I know you guys have heard me in previous calls. I'm going with whoever they take. I'm a Giants fan at the end of the day. So I'm going to root and cheer for whoever they take at the number 3 overall pick. I've stated before, I'm Team Shedeur. I hope they don't overthink this. I don't see how they've done all this 30 visits with him, flying to Colorado to see his games. And I can imagine, yes, Travis Hunter was part of that evaluation going to Boulder. But I don't know if you do all those visits and scouting and games to see Travis Hunter, a receiver / corner. That's just my opinion.
Jason, I'll just throw this out there too. Remember, there's always cameras in Boulder, right? Because of all the media stuff that the Sanders family does. So the Giants were caught on camera a lot over there. How do we know that they weren't in Miami and Ole Miss and Alabama? And the exact same amount, but because there was no cameras to catch them on camera, that people just don't talk about it.
Absolutely. You're right, John. No doubt about it. They definitely could have scouted any of those guys, so you're right about that. Here's what I'll say. I'm not going to try to convince anybody. That's not my place as a fan. We all have, it's human nature. Most times, once people are staunch on their views or opinions, it's rare to move them off. So I'm not here to sway anybody or convince anybody, right?
Yep.
But I like Shedeur. I think he fits this team. I think he fits the city. I think he has plain enough arm. I think he has enough mobility. Because at the end of the day, as a quarterback, you know how you win in this league? You win from the pocket. I know everybody loves Milroe, and I like him too. I like a lot of these quarterbacks. It's not a knock to anybody. But the game is won in the pocket. That's how a quarterback wins the Super Bowl or a chance to get to the Super Bowl. But what I will say overall, I don't think some fans, I'm not talking to you two, you guys know your stuff, and I know you do. But I don't think fans realize, right, how important the QB position is. And I'm not saying if Sanders is not the right guy and Dable and Shane, they should take him. I'm not saying that at all, right? But here's what I mean, right? When we look at a top-tier blue-chip prospect, people will say top-tier blue-chip, or I hate the quote generational. I think it's the most overused quote when it comes to the draft.
Correct.
Because every year seems to be a generational player. It wasn't too long ago I heard Chase Young was a generational. Jeff McKinney was generational. So I'm just tired of that word. But I'll just use blue-chip prospect, right? Let's take a guy like Myles Garrett, who will be in the Hall of Fame. He's been a great player since he came out of Texas. I think he came out of Texas A&M.
Yep.
One of the best DNs, one of the best. He'll go down as one of the best. There's no doubt about it. But to me, he is not, and I'm talking on a mic in a 30,000 feet view, right?
Yeah,
he's
macro.
not as valuable as a starting NFL quarterback, right? And I'm not even talking about the Mahomes and the Allens, right? I'm talking, I'll give you Brock Purdy. I'll give you Geno Smith. I'll give you even Sam Darnold, right? Even though it was a one-year renaissance for him, right?
Jason, let me ask you something. Geno Smith just got traded this offseason. What did he get traded for?
I don't remember, John.
He got traded for a third-round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
If Myles Garrett got traded today, what do you think he'd be traded for?
I believe when he first requested a trade, the demand was 2 first-round picks.
Correct.
Right. And you're right, John. I'm not, and this is not to knock Myles Garrett. I've stated he's a great player. I would love him on the Giants.
No, Jason, I think your larger point is correct. You take the top 8 quarterbacks in the league, or however you want to tier them out, and are they more valuable than a Myles Garrett? Sure, absolutely.
Right.
Once you start getting into like the 14th best quarterback, though, and the 15th best quarterback, that's where I'm gonna have to part ways with you on that one.
Yeah, I agree with your overall point, but the Myles Garretts, Micah Parsons, T.J. Watts, like those guys have proven to be more valuable than your mediocre, average starting NFL quarterback.
I mean, Sam Darnold. Let me just Jason. I'll give you one example, and then you could wrap up your point. Sam Darnold was an unrestricted free agent this year. 32 teams had a chance to sign him.
Absolutely.
How much did he sign a contract for?
I know it was in Seattle, but
I think it was what, $32 million, something like that, Matt?
A year, yeah, I think so.
30 or 32. So he got paid less on the open market as a free agent than the premier pass rushers have been. Garrett signed an extension for 40. Nick Bosa makes 35. There's one other pass rusher up there, and I can't.
Micah Parsons is about to.
And Micah Parsons is about to be around 40. So I think getting into that class of quarterbacks, the answer is no. You're talking about the Dak Prescotts, and I think that's kind of the tier we're talking about, right? The Jared Goffs, the Dak Prescotts, the Brock Purdy. That, I think, is a better argument than when you drop into that kind of next tier of guys that are making, under 40. You know what I'm saying?
I got you, John.
Yeah.
Man. All right, and I'll wrap it up real quick. And like I said, I'm not here trying to convince anybody. It's human nature to, once you feel a certain way about something, you stick on it, right? But
no, of course.
Here's what I'll say. We'll use Brock Purdy as an example, right? I think we all can agree. I'm higher on Brock Purdy than most. I think he's a really, really good quarterback in the league.
Yeah, so do we.
He's not a great QB. I think he's a really good QB.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's just him. All right, how do I want to say this? In my opinion, your value as a player is just how good you are as an individual player or talent, right? It's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. It's what your impact on the overall success of the organization is. That's what makes you a good player, right? The quarterback position has become so vital in the NFL that even merely being a Brock Purdy or a Dak Prescott is going to move the needle, right? More than Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is a Hall of Famer.
Right.
But his impact on the Browns, they're not going to be good until they get a quarterback, even a decent quarterback, regardless of how great Myles Garrett. Even take Micah Parsons.
No, but Jason, I get it, but I think you're talking about, and I appreciate the call, getting a team back to a competitive level, right? And you need a quarterback to get you to a competitive level. But when you're trying to win a championship, that alpha pass rusher is more valuable to you than the middling quarterback. I think that's where I kind of land on that.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Completely. I mean, your game-changing defensive player, again, game-changing. Like, that is a guy that can wreck a game individually while, like, of course, your middle-of-the-pack quarterback can have that outstanding game once in a while, but that's not something you're going to expect on a weekly basis. And
that middle quarterback, and by the way, can take you from 3 wins to 9 wins. And that's a huge jump, but can he get you from 9 to 13? That's the question.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Random question, just off Jason's point, and then we'll get to Vinny, and then we have room for one more call if we want to get one more person in here, Pearson. We'll go fast. We have to be out at 1:30. Pearson has a big meeting he has to get to. Lunch meeting. I have to eat too, actually. All jokes aside. some of these quarterbacks are more valuable to the teams that they're on than to the league as a whole, right? So I think like Brock Purdy is more valuable to the Niners because they see what he can do for them. A guy like Tua, more valuable to the Dolphins because they've seen what he can do in Mike McDaniel's system.
Yep.
If Tua, Purdy, and Myles Garrett all hit the free agent market as unrestricted free agents, which one do you think makes the most money?
I think still Purdy.
I agree with you. Who would be second?
If we're talking before, like, let's say they all became free agents today.
Yeah, today.
Oof.
I think Garrett would make more than Tua.
I think too. I think as well.
All right, so we're on the same page there.
That.
And I think, do you think Purdy on the open market would get more than 45?
Yeah, I could see him.
I think
approaching 50.
I think he'd be I think he'd be between 40 and 45. And I think that's what the 49ers think too, which is why they're having trouble coming up with the contract extension.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
That would be my bet.
I think someone would try to outbid everyone else. You know, if you have one of those bottom of the league teams trying to get the quarterback to sign with them, offering him a massive contract, then I could see him approaching 50. But I do think 45 is more of the sweet spot.
And this is not tampering. This is a hypothetical world that does not exist. Would you be okay if the Giants gave him 50? Brock Purdy if he became a free agent? See, that's the question, right? That's putting the rubber to the road right there.
I don't know if I would want to do that. I would maybe want to let another team do it because I do think Brock Purdy's good. I think
he's very good too, by the way.
His success, at least some of the success, is because he's playing in Kyle Shanahan's system.
Well, the problem is that
Kyle Shanahan is one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL.
And that's the trick. We don't know how much of his success is him and how much of it is Shanahan. Because we've never seen him in a different system before. Like even a guy like Dak Prescott, he's been in 3 different offenses now with the Dallas Cowboys. We know he's going to be good in different systems, right? Yeah. But we don't know with Purdy. And we don't know with Tua either, for that matter.
Well, Tua, the thing that would scare me, I know it's like a kind of a running joke, but later in the season, he does not have good numbers in the cold. And anyone that's been to a game at MetLife Stadium towards the end of the season, like that doesn't bode well for warm weather Tua.
And the wind, he doesn't have a great arm either. So I think I'm with you on all that. But I thought that was an interesting game to play there. All right, we got 5 minutes. We got 2 more calls. Let's go to Vinny in St. Augustine, and then guys, tomorrow we'll take a bunch of your calls too. So don't worry about it. Vinny, what's going on?
Hey, guys. Hope all's going well.
We're good, too.
I wanted to say that if we have Abdul Carter available at number 3, we should not trade down. I don't care how many Godfather would have. You're going to get all picks that are going to be good players but not great players.
What if Travis Hunter is there, Vinny? What if Carter's gone but Hunter's there?
Great question. What is he, a number 3 round pick if he was wide receiver anyway? He's 180 pounds. I'm scared that he's going to get hurt and he's just not going to stand up in the NFL.
Okay.
I might say, yeah, hey, it's great that he plays 2 positions, but if he's injured, he can't play any position. I think Carter brings a dynamic that could just change the dynamic of this defense. And if we get a solid defensive tackle later in the draft, we could have an elite defense with what we did in the secondary on free agency. I just am very scared of giving a gold jacket, and he's not a gold jacket yet, but a gold jacket potential, trading down and let someone else get him, and then we get a couple picks. And then I wanted to say also to that is if Jalen Milroe is available at 32 or 34, whatever we have, I heard, and with the media, you don't know what you can trust, but I heard he's been having discussions with Malik Nabers, and Malik Nabers is pushing for Dable to draft him. And if there's any truth to that, and there's a chemistry between Malik Nabers and any quarterback, didn't Lamar Jackson get projected as a 3rd round, and he snuck into the 1st round with Baltimore years ago?
No, he was never projected as that late of a pick.
He was projected
second round,
late
but
first,
I didn't think they
early
expected
second.
him to go in the 1st round. And, look at him. He's turning out to be the best out of all of them in that year. I think Jalen Milroe, his athleticism is just too much to pass up on. So that's my take. I'll take everything off the air.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate the call. And look, I get the lottery ticket with Jalen Milroe. I understand that, and I can be swayed to that one day and not swayed to that the next. I get it. But Lamar Jackson was far more advanced than Milroe was a passer when he came out.
100%. He won the Heisman. And I'll just real quick about the not wanting to trade down. I agree. I was just saying, if you get that Godfather offer, you got to at least consider it, given the Giants' long-term outlook at the quarterback position. If you get offered a first-round pick in next year's draft to move down, still in the top 10, I'm not saying you have to do it because it is very hard to pass on a guy like Abdul Carter, but you got to at least consider it because it'll put you in a great position next year to potentially land that long-term franchise quarterback if you don't get it this year. That was all I was saying earlier.
So the Jaguars have picks at 36, 70, and 88. If to move down 2 spots, would you do it, Matt, if you're getting 36 and 88 from them?
Honestly, I think so. That 36 pick, you're going to get a guy that can come in and start day one. And 88, potentially another starter there too.
And then you would want to go Mason Graham at 5. Is that what you would do? Or would you pick one of the tackles?
I would want Mason Graham.
Okay.
Because I think Mason Graham next to Dexter Lawrence, obviously Abdul Carter is a better prospect. There's a reason why he's ranked higher. But in terms of fit in the Giants' current roster, if you just plug Mason Graham into that spot next to Dexter Lawrence with Burns and Kayvon on the outside, that is, I think, just as lethal of a defensive front than by adding Abdul Carter and trying to figure out where all these outside linebackers would fit. I think it would be almost as good, and then you add 2 pretty significant day 2 picks. But I don't know if Jacksonville is going to offer 36 and 88 to move up 2 spots.
I would think long and hard about Armand Membo there.
That's fair.
Starting right tackle, I think long and hard about it. But I think Graham's the higher graded player, so I think I'd go with Graham too. I'm with you. All right, let's wrap things up with Duke in Queens. Duke, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Duke. What do you got?
So, John, me and you have agreed on every first-round pick, it feels like, since like 2017, 2018. And this year is no different, although this year it's much easier. And I think I've said this to you in years past. One of my favorite things you guys do is the beat reporter mock. And you couldn't do it this year. I mean, we're the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, Duke, I thought about it. I'm like, I'm not doing beat reporters all the way to pick 34. I did not have the energy nor the time for that. So I said, you know what? I'm going to skip the beat reporter mock this year.
Exactly, and I agree with that. I have 2 questions. My first question is, how would you treat the Kayvon 5th-year option? Because it's pretty soon. I think it's a decision that has to be made pretty soon.
I think you still pick it up, Duke. Even if you draft Abdul Carter, I think you still pick it up. You have him under contract, and then you can figure out what you want to figure out later.
Agreed.
Okay, and I agree with that. Really quick, before I get to my second question, what I would like to do in the draft, obviously besides Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter at 3, is I would love to get a defensive tackle in the 2nd round, honestly, because the Steelers surprised me last year, because I really didn't think much of the offense. I thought the offense was really bad, and I thought their weapons was very suspect besides Pickens, and yet they still made it to the playoffs. So if we can somehow build this dominant defense and we just have our little lumps and bruises on the offensive side of the ball and we could still make the playoffs every year, not to say that we are going to and that's the recipe and it'll all work out hunky-dory. No, but if we can do that, I'm happy with that, and I have no problems with that. As far as the trading back, the Kadarius Toney year scared the hell out of me, man, because we left Rashawn Slater, we left Michael Parsons, we traded back, and I think the 2 picks turned out to be Kadarius and Evan Neal. Am I correct in that?
No, it wasn't Evan Neal. It was Kadarius Toney, and then
it was Evan Neal. 2021 draft, and then the next year we had 5 and 7, Kayvon and Neal.
They picked up from moving down.
We got
6 spots. They got their first round pick the next year.
We went down from 11 to 20 with the Bears that year.
And the Bears gave them their one next year for that?
Because they were moving up for Fields, the overpay for a quarterback. And I think we also got like a 5th round pick in that.
I still think that was I don't think that was a bad trade still, to be honest with you. But yes, obviously the results did not work out the way he wanted them to. For Matthew Citak, I'm John Schmeelk. That's Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. Live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. We're back tomorrow at 12:30. Stay tuned to WFAN tonight for our live draft preview show from 7 to 9, 660 AM, 101.9 FM, and of course on WFAN.com and the Odyssey app. We'll see you then.